Don't doubt that he's there just because you can't see him. Just because you can't see him. Just because you can't reach out and touch him like you can with your self-made pretend gods, or in more familiar terms, our obsessions and our addictions. Things that we go to in order to make us feel good for just a little while. We want to make something to go before us. We want to make something that we can see. We want something that we can touch. Maybe even adding to the shipwreck deal, this is what you don't do when you're shipwrecked. Don't do that. Don't turn to something other than God. All right, so what happens when we do? What happens when we do is that idols are created. Golden calves are created in our lives. So let's read Exodus 32. We'll pick up and we'll go 2 through 5. And that's all the scripture that we're going to get through tonight. I realize there's so much more here. But we're going to go 2 through 5. Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into a golden cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, "These are your gods." So don't get lost in translation here. This literally means, this is your God. So it wasn't more than one golden calf, okay? This is your God. These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." So the next day the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, because your people, whom you brought up out of Egypt, have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them. And they have made them for themselves an idol, cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it, and have said, 'These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt.'" One of the topics we're not focusing on tonight is Aaron. There's a lot we can learn from his actions as well. He caved to peer pressure so easily. He just wanted to give the crowd what they wanted, not what they needed. He was the designated leader in charge while Moses was gone, and just did not step into that role very well. But that's for another time. But the Israelites got tired of waiting, and they quickly turned away. What did they turn to? What did they turn to? A god they created themselves, fashioned in the form of a golden calf. So let's talk about this for a minute. Why on earth would this happen? Well, you have to realize they've been in slavery in Egypt for 400 plus years. And that was that culture. That was its society. That they lived and breathed idolatry there. That's what they did. That they were deeply influenced by that culture. So when they were pressed a little, y'all hang on to this. You might write this down, it's pretty good. So when they were pressed a little, they reverted to what was comfortable instead of what was commanded. When they were pressed a little, they reverted to what they knew, what was comfortable, instead of what God had commanded. Their choice, though, I would never excuse it. It's not inexcusable. I don't like excuses at all. Their actions weren't excusable, but not surprising. Okay, they weren't surprising, and that's why we have this beautiful image up here of this calf. They had seen the power and majesty of the one true God. They had agreed to do whatever He asked, but their faith was still so very fragile. So very fragile. And thus the golden calf was formed by a man, from a man, of man-made things, breaking the first and the second commandment. How does this apply to us today? We obviously, we don't have this in our yard. We don't have this thing in our closet hid away, and we're not bowing down to it. Moon. We're not moon. We're not doing it. So choose our obsessions and we choose our addictions, ultimately choosing ourselves over God, we give them the worship that He deserves, that only belongs to Him, that only belongs to Him. That choice in us happens a lot of times when we're pressed. It happens a lot of times when we're pressed. You know, they reverted back to the worship of something tangible. A lot of times we do too. Most of the time they show up in the indulgence of excessive amounts of something. Okay? Most of the time they show up in the indulgence of excessive amounts of something. We aren't secure enough in our faith. We aren't secure enough in the promises of God. We aren't secure enough in who He says that we are. And so we begin to try to fill those insecurities and those voids with tangible, touchable, seeable things of the world that will never withstand the test of time. Are y'all with me? Are you with me? These things will never withstand the test of time, but we keep trying to make them. We keep trying to make them. And so we find ourselves overeating, overworking, overdrinking, taking more pills, having more sex outside of marriage. We're finding more activities to do. We're finding more television to watch, more social media to be on. Trying to gain more attention, we're trying to gain more approval, we're trying to gain more social status or more money, and it's just more. You know, for me, this more road, it just leads you down a path of destruction, okay? And for me, and I'm probably going to read most of this because I don't want to leave anything out. For me, it was trying to lose 1 more pound, okay? For me, it was trying to lose 1 more pound. I was anorexic for a number of years. The thing that mattered most to me, okay, was the scales and the number on the tag of my pants. That's what mattered most to me. And so, every morning, I got up and I got on the scales, and the number that appeared on those scales determined my mood for the day and whether or not I would have half or a whole sandwich for the entire day. For the entire day. I counted everything. I counted the number of pretzels I would allow myself. The number of pretzels. I mean, good grief, you could eat the whole bag of pretzels. I worshiped the number on the scales. The number on the tag of my jeans. Allowing these thoughts to consume my mind most every day was destructive not only physically, spiritually. Okay? Physically, my reproductive system shut down. And at the time, I didn't care, because it's just one less thing you have to deal with once a month. Not realizing the grief it would cause down the road when I couldn't get pregnant. Not just for me. You see, our bad choices, and our selfish choices, and the choice of self over God doesn't just affect me. Okay? When we do that, it affects the ones that we love the most. Keep that in mind. Okay? So, spiritually, there was no peace. I was a Christian too. There was no peace. There was no joy. No sense of purpose or mission. Okay? I accomplished things along the way, but I felt very empty because I put myself before God, bowing down to worship the scales and the pant sizes, exalting them above God. How ridiculous does it sound? How silly does it sound now to me? It's almost hard to say. From an outsider's perspective, like I'm looking back now from an outsider's perspective, it seemed ridiculous when the Israelites if we look at this and we see them worshiping that golden calf, it seems ridiculous, doesn't it? I mean, it seems crazy. Everyone else around me could see this problem, obviously. Obviously, they could see this problem in me. My family, Ryan, I mean, and everybody tried to say, my aunt, everybody tried to say something to me. I didn't care. I refused to stop. You know, normally when you get on that path to destruction, you have to destruct. Yeah. Before you know, you need change. I didn't care. I denied it. I denied that I was doing anything wrong. I denied that it was wrong. I mean, what was it hurting? I was a Christian, I was going to heaven, I love God. What does this matter? 95 pounds and a zero fitting loosely. I still wanted to lose more weight. And it's a problem. It's a problem, you know? The tangible, touchable, seeable, feelable things we fashion into idols will never be enough. At that time in my life, I could not lose enough weight. And you know what stopped me? When I went to the doctor, and I couldn't get pregnant. This was down the road. I couldn't get pregnant. And when I found out, the question they asked, have you ever lost a lot of weight at one time in your life? And I knew then. You know, I should have known before when my body quit working right. But I knew then I had really messed up. That would be my destructive moment. It's never enough, these tangible things, these tangible things that we make into gods. They're never enough. There's more, and it's never enough. It's never going to be enough. I don't want you to destruct if you're on one of these paths. I don't want you to destruct. You know, I'm asking you to stop if you're on one of these paths. You know, I'm asking you to stop right now. I'm asking you to stop tonight. There's a much better way. There's a much better way to live. There's a much more peaceful way. There's a much more joyful way. There's a much more purposeful way. But, you know, here's the thing. Only you can choose it. You know, you may not can relate to want to lose more weight, but you could probably relate to something in your life that you just struggle with. You're making the right choice sometimes. You have to choose it. I had to choose it. You cannot find this life that I'm talking about, this purposeful, peaceful, mission-filled life until you find it in God. That's the only place that it is. It's the only place that is. You can keep trying to find it in other things, but you never will. You never will. Are loved ones around you trying to help? Are they trying to get you to stop starving yourself from the things you truly need? Will you consider that what you're doing appears to be as ridiculous as worshiping a golden calf? Will you consider that? As ridiculous as it appeared for me to want to lose another pound at my weight and my size. Finish up. So the end of verse 6 says this. Afterward, they sat down to eat and drink, and they got up. And, you know, if you read translations and commentaries, they got up to play, to party. They got up to indulge in revelry. They just wanted to party. They just wanted to party. You know, the boys just wanted to party at Aaron, and their dad and I had to endure getting them there. We live in such a place that affords so much opportunity, so much right to choose, that maybe we've forgotten how to endure. And we simply seek indulgence. The Israelites, you want to say that again? I heard a little bit of a name here. We've forgotten how to endure, and we simply seek indulgence. The Israelites just wanted to get on with it. Waiting was not for them. At least in Egypt, they knew what to expect. Even though it was day after day of forced labor, at least they weren't having to eat manna and follow what they thought was a rigid set of rules. They They may have been slaves, but it not. They got to party and take pleasure in what they wanted. At least there was no waiting. See, the fear of there wasn't the fear of the unknown. See, a lot of people remain in bondage to things because they fear so badly the unknown. They fear so badly, and they just cannot bear the unknown. And it was for the Israelites. You know, not all of them, but for many of them. They forget the waiting, forget the enduring, forget the discipline, forget the self-control. They just wanted a party, and they did, and the Lord's anger burned against them. He called them stiff-necked, which means rebellious, stubborn. I don't want the Lord to call me that. In the land of opportunity, we've got to impose some boundaries, some disciplines to remind us that we're here to make disciples. You know, we don't even get to the disciple-making part. We don't even, maybe not Candace, but we don't even get to the witnessing part. I mean, we're so stuck on ourselves, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying, I mean, we can't get there to what Jesus, really, the last thing he told us to do, we can't get there because we're stuck here, this golden calf. We can't even go and make disciples because we cannot get over ourselves. And that's what we're here to do. We put indulgence before endurance. And when you put indulgence before endurance, it truly cheapens the whole thing. It truly does. Endure. And then when it's time, indulge in the peace and the joy and the satisfaction that you hung in there. That you hung in there. And you chose to do what pleased the Lord instead of what pleased yourself. I'm going to close here. In John chapter 20, verse 28, you may recall that by memory. He said it to Thomas. He said, "You believe because you see me. But blessed are those who believe and haven't seen me." In the Message translation, it says, even more blessings to those who believe and haven't seen it. The Israelites saw, and still they turned away so quickly. They saw, and still they turned away so quickly. Listen up to this next part. If you've gotten sleepy because of the noodles, just perk your ears up. I'm done in 10 minutes. This is an important part to hear. Okay? So they saw, and still they so quickly turned away. And only about 40 days, like we talked about. How can it be? Why so quickly? And I like what the New American Commentary on Exodus says. It says, it's because it's mostly a matter of something that continues to plague even Christian people today. An inability to see that the spiritual world is primary to and in control of the physical and visible world. In order to help his people understand the truth, Yahweh insisted on being believed in rather than being seen. It was much easier to believe in something that could actually be seen. The Israelites were powerfully attracted to the latter option. And so are we. So are we. And so we have to know that. We have to know that. So take heart. The Israelites witnessed the unbelievable and still their faith waned. Take heart and be encouraged that even those like Adam and Eve walked and talked to God messed up. The Israelites were witnesses to God's majesty. And about a month later, broke the first 2 commandments that God spoke directly to them. Witnesses to God's majesty. And about a month later, broke the first 2 commandments God gave to them. We are born with a sinful nature. We've got to know and realize that. We are attracted to sinful things at times. You may wonder why you have to continue to struggle against a certain thing. I mean, over and over again, I'm a Christian, have the Holy Spirit dwelling in me. Do I have to continue to struggle against this thing? Maybe it's even something you hate. Maybe it's even something you despise that you do after you've done it. And maybe it's something you wouldn't dare ask for prayer for, because it would label you in a certain way. I want you to take heart. We are all sinners, and they're not categories, levels of sin. It's okay that we aren't okay. It's okay that we aren't okay. But what's not okay is being okay with it. Y'all catch that? It's okay that we're not okay. You know, I like to hear that because I'm a perfectionist. I like to follow the rules. I like to get it right every time. I hate it when I mess up. And I do. But I have to remember it's okay because I'm not perfect. It's okay that I'm not okay. But what's not okay is being okay with that. In other words,